All right, everybody, welcome back into Cherry Picking. Today's video, best NHL playoff bets for Saturday, April 22nd. Just recapping Thursday night, the picks for April 20th. We had the Leafs that won easily. Game 2, I think we pretty much predicted that they were going to come out firing, and they did in every single capacity of the game. They dominated it. Vasilevsky didn't look that great either. The other pick we won, Evan Rodriguez point. Colorado squeaked by Game 2 there, getting one at home, which is huge. Obviously, heading over to Seattle, the series tied for them, but I don't think anyone saw this series being as close as it is this early. And then the last pick, unfortunately, we didn't cash on was the Jets and the Golden Knights under, but who knows, might be going back to it in this video. I just can't see the series continuing to have a ton of goals as the type of play is very slow, lackadaisical from the couple periods that we watched yesterday. So I'm going to be looking at these 4 games on Saturday and figuring out our 3 best bets. Let's get into the video. All right, so the first team and first game we're going to be looking at is the Devils versus the Rangers, Game 3. And we're going to be taking the Devils' money line here, playing with fire for sure. If you look at just the box score, obviously it looks like the Rangers have absolutely dominated this series, winning both of those games 5-1. But I think if you look deeper, this series is a little bit closer than it seems. There's very similar reasons as to why I'm picking the Devils here, as I did with the Islanders yesterday. Although they are down 2-0 in this series, they're not going home, unfortunately. They're going to MSG, but obviously it's stone throws away from the Prudential Center, really not that far. So I don't think that makes a huge difference. If anything, a change of scenery might actually help this Devils team in terms of just getting the puck past Igor Shesterkin. He's been great in this series so far. He's been better at home this season, but last year we saw him kind of struggle back at home. I don't know if it was the pressure value or whatnot, but he definitely didn't play as well as he did on the road in a lot of those games. So looking at the Devils here, they lead right now out of all these teams that have played so far. Corsi 4 percentage in 5-on-5 play out of any of these teams in the playoffs. That's up to 60%. So they're dominating puck possession and then also shots on goal right now. I mean, the Rangers are barely amassing 22 shots per game over the first 2 games. Vanacek just hasn't played all that well, and the Devils are just taking way too many penalties right now. Last game, Kreider scored 2 goals on the power play, both off really interesting or weird tips in front of the net, which are just the type of goals that the Rangers score. And then on top of that, with some of their skill, they just don't score on a ton of high volume shots. Just the shots are usually just very quality scoring chances. So if the Devils can try to limit that in Game 3, which I think Lindy Ruff and this team can, and they will, I think they have a much better chance of winning. And you just got to hope Vitek Vanacek plays one good game, and I think it'll come here because their backs are against the wall at this point. All right, so the second game we're going to be looking at are the Lightning and the Leafs. They head over to Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay, and I'm going to be taking the Leafs money line at -120 as the opening line. I think they come in hot here and win Game 3 just like they did in Game 2. Even if it is away from Scotiabank Arena, I think they'll be able to play some really solid hockey here. They won Game 3 last year after being a similar situation, although they lost. They won Game 1 last year and lost Game 2. This year, you just flip that. But I think they'll still come into Tampa Bay looking for a win early in Game 3. If you look at just the expected stats over the first 2 games, like they've absolutely dominated them. The Lightning scored a ton of goals in that first game. I think there definitely just everything possibly went wrong for Toronto in that first game. The second game, a few things went their way. They played a little bit more control. They didn't give up a goal in the first 2 minutes. Instead, they scored in the first 2 minutes. So they dominated that first period. I think you'll see the winning team, that be a common theme with the winning team in this series and most playoff series. But looking at all strengths, last game, the expected goals for 4.7 to 1.62, and then just looking at 5-on-5 play as well, 2.77 compared to one less than 1.5. So Tampa Bay really didn't do a ton at all offensively. The first 2 games, their best player has been Corey Perry for the most part, and he got kicked out in that second game after getting a penalty late in the third period. Stamkos, Kucherov, and Point have honestly been relatively quiet, I would say. Kucherov scored that goal in the first period of the Game 1 right at the end on the power play, but other than that, haven't been all that great. Just seemed very frustrated actually after Game 2, so maybe that's a telltale sign for the rest of the series. But I just really like the way Toronto's played really after that second period in Game 1. I thought they kind of reined it in. Samsonov played much better. Vasilevsky definitely didn't play up to par as what we saw in Game 1, and I think that's honestly a relatively consistent theme we'll see throughout this series. I know he's been great throughout the playoffs over the last 4 years, but he can only play so well for so long. And last year, he actually started to diminish a little bit. We saw his numbers go down actually at home compared to on the road, so I'm worried about how he'll play at home here. And then the defensive issues for Tampa Bay as well. If Hedman doesn't go again and Chernak, it's likely Hedman will probably play, but Chernak I don't think will. That hit from Bunting was a pretty pretty good blow. So, but even if Chernak is the only one that's out, you're still relying a little bit heavily more on guys like Philip Myers, Ian Cole, Hayden Fleury, and even Sergachev got a little bit banged up in that game too. So I wonder how much that'll affect him in game 3. The addition of Matthew Nyes was pretty solid on that O'Reilly and Noel Acciari line. You have the ability to let Acciari and O'Reilly be those two grinders on the line. Nyes, definitely a bigger guy who can hold his own, but definitely more thought of a scorer, a little bit of a skilled guy. All these kids coming up are usually going to be pinpointed with that. So I do really like the Leafs here. Despite it being on the road, I think they can take advantage of this team. I really don't think this Tampa Bay team is anywhere near the level of play they were in the last couple of years. All right, the last play we're going to be looking at, it's actually the first game of the day, and it's between the Golden Knights and the Jets. And I'm going with the under again. I know I went with the under in game 2, but going back to Winnipeg here, I have even more confidence in it, especially with how that game went game 2, excuse me. Watching that Vegas team in that first period, they pretty much put nothing on net. They weren't enforcing at all. And then this last 2 periods, they definitely started to create a little bit more quality in terms of scoring chances, but I still don't think Hellebuyck played great. And there's definitely some cleanup that Rick Bowness and this defensive core can do. So if you watch yesterday's video, you would know that home and road split's very important when you're looking at goalies. Connor Hellebuyck this season was obviously much better at home. Pretty consistent rate you'll see with a lot of these goalies. Much better at home than he was on the road, save percentage-wise, goals against average-wise, and they had 0 shutouts on the road, and I believe had 4 at home this season. So we just need one really solid Connor Hellebuyck performance for the Jets to maybe steal a win. And even to get an under here, because Vegas's offensive attack hasn't been that great. It was a little bit better in the second period and third period of game 2, but still the volume, just like I would say like a New York Rangers team, is just not there. The quality, they're starting to figure it out. A lot of these guys haven't played together. Mark Stone was out for a good chunk of that season. This lineup has been, there's been a lot of different faces moving through this top 6 and even top 9. So the Jets have played much better defensively at home as well, on top of the fact that Hellebuyck has played well, and you could see that through they're the second best under team at home this season, 26-13-2. I think that also speaks to kind of the way Rick Bowness plays, and I think at home, having the playoff experience he does have, I think they're not going to come out the gates necessarily firing. I think they'll want to control play and pace in that first period. It's what Rick Bowness does through his defensemen, which I think will lead to a slower game. Now, the first period under has hit in these first 2 games, and both games ended up going over, but I think it'll be different here as you see them at home. Winnipeg, too, they don't necessarily impose too much offensively on the road compared to at home. At home, they're barely averaging over 30 shots per game and then allowing around 27-26 in 5-on-5 play as well. So if Vegas can play their style of defense where they're blocking a ton of shots. And then Laurent Brossoit has also been serviceable. He's been good enough in these first 2 games to make it even going into game 3. And if you're looking at the end of the season where he was playing a decent amount of his hockey, his home and road splits really weren't that far off. He played similarly at home as he did on the road. So I'm confident that he'll be able to have a good game even in this Winnipeg atmosphere. And I think Hellebuyck will definitely steal the show here. And the Jets altogether will play a much better game defensively, leading to an under 5.5, which is priced at -105, and I'd play it all the way up to like -110, -1. All right, thank you guys for tuning in. Let me know what you thought of the best bets for Saturday. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.